Good afternoon. I'm going to try to talk to everybody before we all go to sleep for our afternoon nap. My name is Howard Follis. I'm a practicing urologist. My colleague, Dr. Hill, said he was not the smartest guy in the room. Well, I'm not as smart as a neurosurgeon. I'm just a urologist. So I promise not to talk about what I do or show any good pictures, and I do have some good pictures. Hey, I appreciate HL7 and FHIR letting us come and participate. My company's name is Juxly, and I'm going to move fairly quickly. Let me tell you about what we do. No surprise, we use smart on fire technology. I'm a practicing physician, and so I'm really interested in what doctors and nurses and providers have to do at the point of care. I'm really motivated to make patient care better and providers' lives easier. And so using those three components, I actually think the business side that we all need to think about, it actually increases the ROI for EHRs. And I mean existing EHRs, and I mean health systems that have spent millions on an EHR and are trying to figure out how to get the full ROI from that. So I'd like to be a part of that. I think EHRs are here to stay. I'm just trying to make them better and more usable. Here's a quick history of how I got here. I started in practice 26 years ago. I had an interest in EHR usability. I practiced in Springfield, Missouri, but if you have a good ear, you'll hear an accent that comes from Texas, so don't tell anyone in Missouri that I'm there. They might send me back. I founded a company called Eurochart EHR in 2004. It was a urology-specific EHR. We had a really good user interface for the day and some specific urology content. Fortunate enough in 2011 to be a strategic acquisition for Endo Pharmaceuticals, and they were interested in some urology medical device companies. Worked for them for a year, set out my non-compete, and then founded Juxly. It's really founded on the idea that EHRs are still hard to use, but they are widely owned now, and that was not the case in 2004. And I'd just like to have a role in maybe optimizing that EHR usage. So the first product I'm going to talk about is called Timeline, and it's a simple product. It acquires patients' charts, the electronic version. It organizes it relevantly and presents it by context and time. I'm going to briefly, this will be pretty basic, but again, I'm in the weeds every day, as several people are in the room actually seeing patients, and so typically the office nurse would take a history from the patient. She would then enter that data into an EHR, and I admit there are patient portals that do this, but typically there is some component of that data entry that remains manual. Once she completes entering all that data, there is some data that lives in the EHR, some sort of ongoing things like encounters and lab results and x-ray results that sort of live there. And this is a gross oversimplification, but I want to make a point. My first point is now the provider walks in, and that's the view he has, figuratively and literally. He has that view. He literally has to connect dots from the different areas of the EHR. And what I am really passionate about is giving him a different view. So I'm going to do something pretty simple. I'm going to take a couple of encounters, and I'm going to take everything that happened between those encounters, and I'm going to put them on a timeline by time. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the doctor a really unique view, and this is the secret sauce of what I'm doing and what really makes me passionate. We're going to collect all that data. We're going to organize it by time, and wait for it. Here it comes. This is really important. We're going to give some context to it. So a lab was drawn, and it required a particular medication to be started. That medication, because it might change some lab work down the road, required a second lab result a little further down the road. An x-ray was done. A problem, an ICD-10 code, was diagnosed based on the x-ray, and that might require a follow-up x-ray down the road. Also, because that problem was diagnosed, perhaps the patient was on a medicine that had to be stopped. So I'm just trying to demonstrate here that the context and the time of this data is important. It's not okay to put it in an EHR in a logical place. It's really okay if you can give providers context. This includes nurses, medical nurse practitioners, CMAs, anyone who needs the context of the patient's medical history. So we actually display the patient's entire medical record in a unified view, and I'll show you that in a second, so that providers can connect the dots. The end result should be more time interacting with the patient and less time interacting with the EHR. That's probably the goal of the rest of my practice life, and I do believe this will lead to better patient care. There's a business case here too. Happier patients, happier providers. Hard to quantify, but really important in this day and age when many doctors are retiring early, patients are upset with their providers. My doctor has his head buried in the EMR the whole time. There's also an issue of provider productivity, and again, pulling the ROI from that EHR, from the hospital system. Mark, you want to comment real quickly? This is Mark Gidman. He's the Chief Technical Officer at Juxly, and he's the guy that makes all of this work. And I asked him just to make one comment about our endpoints.
So, as you've seen just from the previous the previous screens, when we started working with Cerner, they said, "What endpoints do you want to use?" And I said, "All of them." And so we did. And then every time they had endpoint, actually, we started kind of getting in this deal where they would get ready to release an endpoint, and we would say, yeah, we're ready for it. Can we beta test that for you? So even at CHC last year, we showed an endpoint that had only hit production within a matter of weeks before that, and we were the first users of it. So we grab all the endpoints and all the data. In our production instances, we have timelines that go back to 1990 something, where the beginning of time for that health systems data. And really, it's in some cases, it's the only place that a provider can actually see that patient's full patient record. So
this is our product. This is Timeline. We have two apps in the Cerner App Store. We have Timeline and Vault. We're actually the only company so far that has two apps in the App Store. This does open inside of the EHR and is accessed along the left toolbar. The patient's entire medical history is loaded in this middle panel, and the way this is organized is we have encounters on the left, and right now we can filter by all providers or just my encounters, and then we could sub-filter by where the encounters occurred. We can do the same with medications, and then lab results, x-rays, procedures, vitals, everything on the right side of this middle section, and it's all accessible by scrolling. And then from the timeline, you can get further details in whatever you want to take a look at. A problem that was diagnosed, a medicine that was prescribed. On the right side is allergies, meds, history, problems, everything listed in the graphical way that we just talked about. We have another way to filter the data, and it's called trends. And this particular patient has a trend loaded around hypertension, and we call these profiles. And essentially, it's a way of subcategorizing the data even further. If this patient has hypertension, you can iteratively build this profile to display problems, meds, labs, x-rays, and procedures. You can graph the meds, and essentially you build a profile and you leave it in your library of profiles, and you apply a hypertension profile every time you see a hypertension patient. The way to build the profile is to open the profile for the first dozen or so hypertension patients that you see, actually recruit their data into the profile or leave it out. You go through that iterative process, and once the profile is completed, the bottom section here are profiles that can be shared within a tenant. So some nerdy doctors like me will build some really cool profiles. Some of my partners would never touch a profile or a template, but they might use mine. So they can come down here and grab profiles and use them. We've got a flow sheet similar to what Cerner has. The only, not the only, but one of the improvements is if you click on CBC, if you click on the header bar, it actually takes all the white space out of the flow sheet and just moves everything together by date. Again, it's just a few clicks, but it saves quite a bit. You can also filter the labs. All of the filters I've shown you today stick in place. Once you set them, they're set for that user. We split vitals out because it's easier to pull those out of a flow sheet and review them. This last tab is unique. We're an app company, and we are not a client server. We're an app company, and as such, one of the things we take pretty seriously is feedback from our users. So this is just a basic feedback screen where our users have an opportunity to reach out directly to us, not to the health system, not to the IT department. We've also got a set of videos here, about 30 seconds each. Some doctors might watch videos. Some doctors might watch a quick start screen, a variety of different ways to get the information that you need. I'm going to flip back to my deck. I am sorry, that is not my deck. This is my deck. I want to talk to you very briefly in the time that I have left about a second product called Vault. Vault is a simple product that tries to address the transition in fee-for-service medicine to value-based medicine. And I'm going to submit that EHRs as currently designed were designed for fee-for-service. You see the patient, you build some documentation, you charge for it. In value-based medicine, our EMRs really are not meant to do that. They're really not designed for risk. In value-based medicine, you see a bunch of patients and you hope that you can hang on to your money and take good care of them, increase quality, and still make a good living. With Juxly, with this product, with Vault, we actually concentrate on HCC coding, which is the currency that's going to be used in value-based medicine. HCC codes lead to accurate RAF codes, and I don't mean upcoding, I do mean accurate HCC and RAF coding. That RAF scoring will directly determine reimbursement, whether it's commercial, Medicare Advantage, CPC Plus, and some of the ACOs. So this product actually, again, extends the EHR by maximizing the return on investment. And it does keep the EHR as a single source of truth. So anything done in the Vault side will be transferred back to the EHR. So let me show you very briefly what we've done with Vault. This is our Vault product, and everything on the left side is the patient's problem list. The color coding is this. A gray code is a non-HCC code. An orange code is an HCC code that has not been documented, meaning CMS documentation has not been completed on the app side. A green code is an HCC code that's been fully documented. There's an estimated RAF score of the patient right here, taking into account their demographics and their total HCC for a calculated RAF, just to give you an idea of where the patient is. That's a real-time RAF score. Typically, RAF scores are not real-time. They're submitted once or twice a year and released by Medicare. There are parts of the healthcare ecosystem that have access to more current RAF scores, but those of us on the front lines could really benefit from a live RAF score. If I take a gray code and I open up a search screen, that search screen will present to me a list of HCC codes. If I can ethically and accurately choose one of those codes in place of the gray code, I will do so. And what that will do is open up the opportunity for me to actually do my HCC documentation. And I've built the documentation on the right. I've turned it into a green code. When I click save, that documentation is linked to the encounter back on the EHR side. And I've also tuned up the problem list with HCC in mind. We do have a decision support module here that we're currently working on to give the doctor an idea. Would you consider some of these issues because of the facts on the right, whether it's claims data, lab data, or an outside feed from outside the EHR? This is a way to bring data from outside the EHR and put it right in front of the doctor at the point of care while he's face-to-face with the patient. And thank you, FHIR. That's what has allowed us to do that. We have an analytics module that sits on top of this, and imagine that someone wanted to see their average RAF score year to date at the system level, at the health plan level, even at the physician level. Medicare Advantage patients seen with corresponding RAF scores, and for guys like me that don't always get our documentation done, the incomplete documentation indication that I'll need to look at when I get home at night. So to finish up, complete HCC coding within the EHR workflow, which is critical and done at the point of care. The last thing I'll say in my last few seconds is my team is really experienced healthcare developers. We actually have a toolbox and a fair amount of FHIR expertise. We've worked with both Cerner and Allscripts in the trenches and are anxious to work with other EHR vendors. We do a lot of custom FHIR development for hospitals that have freestanding web apps and they would like to transition those to FHIR apps, or a lot of good ideas out there about problems at the health system level, not necessarily at the health system level that aren't being addressed at the EHR level, and we're happy to build FHIR apps in that situation. So once again, thank you for the opportunity to present. I appreciate that very much, and I'll be around this afternoon if anyone has any questions. Thank you.